All right. The creative urge of spirit. As I mentioned, our theme for July is the creative urge of spirit. And let's start out with some questions. So I have up in front of me the chat. I know that there are many of you out there watching, and I know that the live stream has a little bit different timing for each individual. So I'm going to pose these questions, and I hope you'll engage, and I hope that you'll share in the chat, and then I'm going to circle back. So in the chat, I want to ask you a question. What new routines have you created since COVID? I'm sure that things have changed. They've changed for all of us. And how have you created a new way of living? So I'm going to ask that you throw into the chat a little bit about how you've been creative in this time. Certainly, we have all watched COVID surge in a way that we didn't expect, or at least I can say that I didn't expect. And I'm actually sad to actually watch the numbers grow into double digits in Butte County. It has certainly been a call to prayer for me, and I'm sure it has for many of you too. I'm going to take a moment here to ask Macy if you'll allow me to share screen. The host needs to enable me to share the screen, if you will, Macy. Either that or make me host, one of the two. I want to share with you a graph that I have been using to watch. And, we certainly don't want to be sticking our head in the ground when it comes to being aware of COVID. And we may be metaphysicians who know a greater good, but this particular graph that I hope you're seeing all here comes from the LA Times. And if you take a quick look at it, you'll actually see that each of those lines are representing counties of California. And you get a chance to see on the left-hand side are the number of cases, and at the bottom is the number of days that we have been in, well, since probably March 19th, I think, since we have had the stay in place. And you'll notice that there are different trends for different counties. Los Angeles, of course, leading the way at the top, and many of the Bay Area counties also available. But I also want to particularly point out, and you're going to watch the graph change as I move my mouse over the top. And here is particularly Butte County. So you're noticing that as I move my mouse over the county, that for the first 15 days or so, if I can stay on Butte County, that might be a little challenging. You'll notice in the first 15 to 30 days, we were actually fairly flat. Now, granted, I'm aware of the fact that we didn't have as much testing as we have now. But I also want you to notice the change in the graph based on looking at all the lines that are below Butte County. And notice how we have, since the opening of the state, we now are watching our graph move very quickly, such that we have 338 cases now. The last, week or so has been double-digit cases. And we're doubling that every 11 days. And so I want to draw our attention to that as metaphysicians. I want us, I know that there are 5 power of 8 circles that we have actually started, which I'm very excited about. It's a way to connect spiritually and to connect with one another and to come together with the intention of prayer, the power of prayer. And I'd like to invite you all as we look at this particular graph. And again, as you move your mouse across this graph, you get to see how each of the counties are changing over time. And since we have this graph to actually measure, I would like to use this graph as a way to invite you all to be in prayer for Butte County, that we see the numbers of Butte County go down and change the graph. And I know we have the power to do this. So for the Power of 8 circles and any other prayer groups, asking you to focus your prayers on lowering Butte County's spike of COVID so that we can come together as a county. So I'm planting that seed and asking you all to participate. I'm going to stop sharing that. If you'd like to actually have the link to that graph, you can email me at revkathy@cslchico.org, and I'm happy to send the link to you. So here we are, 4 months later. Did we imagine our current status as frankly around the world, and more specifically for CSL Chico? What can we do? And I know that for many folks, the opportunity to be invited to stay home a little more invites the opportunity for more spiritual practice, allowing ourselves to change our habits, perhaps to become a little more focused on our intentions and attentions on wholeness and unity. So now I'm going to pull up here. Love that you're all engaging with me. Thank you so much. And love that that what has the call to the urge of creativity while we're all home, for some of us, creatively cooking and baking. Yummy. Expanded spiritual practice. Yes, love that. Gardening, less driving, so a better job of taking care of the environment. So the call to sustainability, this is sustainability of ourselves, a call to how are we when we are with ourselves and with our family, with less distractions. How are we called to pay attention and bring ourselves more aware and focused. A better job of then sustaining ourselves, caring for ourselves and caring for one another. Yes, lots of gardening and cooking, watching, perhaps both from an education perspective as well as the news. Starting your day in the garden, that is lovely, Anne. And much like you, also walking more often every day. I have a Fitbit. It allows me to pay attention to my intentions, giving me feedback, and definitely been getting a lot more walks and a lot more steps in. For some, enjoyed Zoom yoga. Thank you, Liz George. And more walking there too. Co-creating and nurturing. It's wonderful to be together even in the garden. Yes, that's great. Tending to tomatoes and roses. An engaged gratitude practice in the morning and the evening. Love that there is a new ritual at sunset. How beautiful in connecting to the cycle of life, the circle of life. Yeah, numerous visiting local places. So driving to the beauty that surrounds us here in Northern California. And yes, there are so many opportunities for that. I feel very blessed to be living right near 1 Mile Park and to be able to easily take a walk every day. Yeah, learned how to creatively be present. Yeah, that is really the call. That is really the call. I know for some, we may be driving ourselves crazy. I know for others that there may be some anxiety, some anxiousness, some worry. And I know that if we don't have a spiritual practice of becoming present, that we can be causing more anxiety and worry by trying to estimate what we think the future is or what may happen in the future. And I'll talk about that in a second. So practicing Ho'oponopono, beautiful, for forgiving all that has come and all that is. I know that this, what would I say, circumstance that we are all in certainly brings out very creative thinking about where we are and how we are and where we're going. Daily earthing. I like that, Susan. I like the practicing daily earthing on the ground for deep nature connection. Yes, allowing ourselves to align and remembering that life with a capital L comes first in each and every moment. For Connie, asking deep questions and then allowing for the time to sit and to contemplate and to connect internally, not so much about how our news and our society likes to distract us, but an opportunity to really connect and where am I in all of this? What is my unique expression? What is my unique contemplation? What wisdom is being called forth in me as I sit and I listen? Helping one another, singing, laughing with spirit choir. Yes, I just can't get enough out of that Moomba expression. I think everybody needs to have access to that Moomba as a wonderful expression to remind ourselves to stay light. I know it's very easy to stay very serious. And in one of the books I was reading, as children, when we come together, we definitely go into our creative imagination together. And yet, as we become adults, we get so serious. And so the opportunity to look for ourselves about maybe where we need to become a lot lighter. Where can we align with the creative urge of spirit for some good, fun, positive, enriching things to do? It is a call to how creative can we be? Animals, yes. The animals definitely keep us present and definitely keep love flowing. And my understanding, as I hear through the grapevine, that while you may not know it, John Boyle had a new kitten running across his lap as he was doing that meditation. What wonderful focus. And yet at the same time, a kitten bringing the joy of reminding all of us to keep it light. And a deeper opportunity to connect with each other if we choose to. I know that our connection in person has been waned, but it's also a call to get more intentional in reaching out to one another. And I want to talk about that a little bit here also as we go through the lesson here. And researching new interests on the internet. Yes, it's a unique opportunity. If you think 10, 15 years ago, what was available on the internet to be known, like I'm cooking something new, how many recipes can you find now? It doesn't take much to actually look at that and to consider creating new things. So we, in this month of July, also celebrate our freedom. And I use freedom as an opportunity to remind ourselves we have the power to choose to do our spiritual practice, to choose where to focus our attention, to choose where to align with our truth and vibrate ourselves with that truth. The power to create and the power to imagine. We have that power each and every day, and it influences where we spend our time focusing, which of course, where we focus, the energy goes, which allows for greater expansion. So those of us, of course, in daily work environments, there is still so much change going on. So many decisions to be made that basically change our workflow and our policies and our expectations, and they affect everybody. Chico Unified School District, which you may know employs 900 teachers, are still working on how to open school in the fall. Traditional, some form of hybrid, or online. It is definitely a call to be creative, to look differently at how we educate our kids. And 900 folks aren't sure right now exactly what school's going to look like when they go back. And I know that that is a very, can be very anxious and not knowing what it's being called to a whole new job in a whole new way, to connect in a whole different way, to teach. And the decision, of course, affects so many kids, so many parents, so many teachers, so many administrators. There's a lot of people trying to brainstorm right now. How do we do this education differently? And that too is a call to prayer, as the creation and the call, the urge to create something new is being called forth. Many of you might have seen, I was in the Chico Enterprise Record article on July 7th. It's entitled, Chico State Prepares Faculty for More Teaching Online. So this week I just finished 5 days of live teaching for 208 faculty on how to teach fully online. 90% of the university's courses will be online. There's only 10% of our courses which may have some live component, such as the university farm for animal science, or chemistry labs if you're have a degree in chemistry, or performing arts. And next week I'll be teaching another 20 faculty how to teach online. And all of us have not done this before. And that can make people very, very, very uncomfortable. I haven't ran a program like this before. 7 hours for 5 non-consecutive days, 100% on Zoom. Faculty haven't taught 4 courses before online. Students haven't taken all of their courses fully online. The whole organization of about 2,100 people are trying to change everything we do. Change, change, change. Lots of it, and lots of it coming fast. Spirit is urging for new creation, to let go of the old, let go of the way it used to be. And it is a call. If you're somebody who typically looks back, you may become more anxious when you're looking forward. But the practice of being in the presence and listening to the call of your ability to create is the call that we are experiencing now. Many people have asked me, how are you doing? And how are you doing it? And my response is, I'm lining up with Spirit in these particular times, knowing that it's the time to create. And what I actually love about these times is that it's all calling us to be creative. Each one of us individually, connecting with each other in new ways constantly. And I personally am thriving on how do we create? How do we create? How do we create something new? How do we do this differently? And I feel there's, for me, a joy and a funness in creating new ways to achieve our end goals, or achieve our intention. And I have to say that I watch for those who don't want to change or create new ways, that it's hard and it's difficult. And I am compassionate about that. It's amazing to watch how creative people can be in even being resistant. As I read all of the different thoughts about wearing masks, when I can get myself out of judgment on that, I can sit back and actually see just how creative we really all are. And how do we use that call to create in new ways? Now, the urge of Spirit to create has always been with us. The Bible begins with God creating the heavens and earth in 6 days. And we know that the heavens and the earth continue to change and expand just by listening to science, watching nature. You know that growth and change still happens as those of us who are in our yards are watching our plants continue to thrive and grow. Life is so abundant as it constantly creates more. I work in my yard to keep the weeds out, to keep the bushes and trees trimmed. There's constant creation happening. And that ability to create is your spiritual nature. Now, the Buddhists believe that the beginning of this world and of life is inconceivable, since they both, as in the beginning of the world and life, neither have a beginning nor an ending, that the world was not created once upon a time. And instead, they believe that the world is constantly being created millions of times every second, and that it will always continue to do so. Millions of beings creating in every second. Life is more fluid than we may realize. And certainly our day and time today is a call to that. Yes, each of us creating every second, whether we create and we lean into all of the change, or whether we create ways to be resistant to all the change. Creation and creativity is always happening because nature's spirit is a constant urge of creation. An urge is a strong desire or impulse. And spirit's nature, of course, is in us, as we are the wholeness of life. Spirit's nature, if we open up to it, will find that constant urge of creation in each one of us. And there can be a joy in that creation. Now, for many of us who have studied the science of mind, the metaphysics of our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, you will all remember Thomas Troward, who was a judge and in 1910 created the creative process in the individual. And the book, The Creative Process in the Individual, was very influential on Dr. Ernest Holmes as he created 20 to 30 years later, the beginning of the science of mind. Now, The Creative Process in the Individual is a chewy book because Troward was a judge, but he did lay out very logically and systematically how we are all of the universal spirit, and that by universal spirit contemplating itself, we are creating form and evolving form. Evolving all forms, the form of our life, the form of COVID, the form of anything that you can name. And as we continue to create, we expand our own consciousness. We are on the leading edge of experience here that takes us to new levels of deep soul understanding. We are here on earth to expand our spiritual knowledge of truth, to move our subconscious mind, directing and knowing a greater truth, and in directing and knowing that greater truth, creating. And, quantum physics was not known in 1910 by Thomas Troward or Dr. Ernest Holmes, but we know now that the observer influences that which we see. We have a choice to contemplate and enact the spiritual laws to co-create with spirit. Now, we are creative beings, and I had an administrative assistant once tell me that she wasn't creative. And I said, "You may not be crafty, but you are creative." And she looked at me funny and said, what do you mean by that? And I said, everything you do every day is creative. Now, of course, we get into our habits. And as you have all now demonstrated, I'm looking at the chat, you have stated how you've been creative in this time of change, how you've been creative in expressing yourself, how you've been creative in focusing your attention, in choosing what it is you do now that we are, I might say, less distracted by the constant going. But now by being and being home more frequently, what is it that we have chosen to create in our life differently? In order to solve a problem, as Einstein said, we have to go above the thinking that created the problem. And here is our opportunity to be thinking above and beyond the problem that was created or is created. Now, we can read the news. We can watch the resistance. And then where do we choose to focus? In the negativity or in the knowingness of our truth and choosing where it is and what it is we choose to do next? If you choose not to take offense of all the stuff that is going on, you can actually laugh at the creativity and use that creativity, because, you know, we all tell stories, and stories are creative. We all tell stories, and there's a lot that goes on in our head telling our story. We're creative in our storytelling, whether we're talking to ourselves or whether we're talking to others. So you're more creative than you think. And I'm asking you to open up to the truth of your creativity. How does Spirit urge you to create? How are you using your creativity? Again, some people are bored, some are driving themselves crazy, some have taken the time to reflect, some are reading more, some are in the garden, some are baking more. How are you creating? On Facebook, for those of you that are on Facebook, I shared an article from Mindful Magazine that's called Train Your Brain to Build Resilience. Train your brain. You know, resilience is the capacity to bend with the wind, go with the flow, bounce back when adversity shows up. And resilience has been pondered and studied and taught in many tribes, societies, philosophical and spiritual traditions. And even through the literature, you can see it for eons. Resilience has been studied. It's essential to our survival and thriving of human beings and human society. We now also know that resilience is one behavioral outcome of a mature, well-functioning prefrontal cortex in the brain. And importantly, whether we're facing a series of small annoyances or an utter disaster or disturbance such as COVID, resilience is teachable, learnable, and recoverable. And as the article says, it takes practice and it takes awareness, but the power always lies within us. And this is why we do our spiritual practice. Taking the time to meditate, contemplate, pray, become conscious, become aware, make new choices. You know, faith is shown to support people living longer. And I believe that's true because faith and spiritual practice build resilience. So how are we going to get creative with our community? I want you to open to your creative urge of spirit in you and as you. And as I've been talking to some of you in the community, while COVID cases spike, I am not inclined to be in our building. People, we have been brainstorming outside activities and locations for short opportunities to see each other with masks and physical distancing, not a whole service, but for some good eye contact. But again, the guidelines still say that gathering 10 or less. We want to recreate our youth and family event from last year, kayaking on the Forebay. We're contemplating, could we do that, being in nature and being able to be both at the Forebay and in our kayaks at a safe physical distance. I realize that's not for everybody. I also had Crystal research renting the back lawn of the Chico Elks Lodge and or the area near Sycamore Field where we used to have our, near 1 mile where we used to have our annual picnics. So we're going to have to work creatively, finding some safe ways to see each other. I am open to your thoughts. Send me an email if you have some ideas. We've also been brainstorming new ways to connect with each other. And again, I just really want to take the time to thank Dr. Carolyn, Monty, John, Liz, and Connie for leading Power of 8 circles. You might have noticed in the Chico News and Review, we also advertised in case people were looking for ways to connect. And of course, with Lynn McIntaggart and her book, The Power of 8, it's an opportunity to connect with people in our community. So we will be starting a 6th Power of 8 circle soon. I've also been contemplating, well, what did we used to do when we weren't so mobile in these days? And I've thought about maybe we should have a fun letter writing campaign to one another. Maybe with some prompts of the spiritual deep questions, Connie, we can actually prompt one another for sharing more deeply and intimately, which, by the way, our annual theme is deepening our connection. And I think we're being called to that, even under the new circumstances. So maybe perhaps writing letters to one another with some deep contemplation might be a wonderful way to connect. And as I also mentioned, like last Sunday, I'm looking to continue to change even our Sunday services. We had JD Martin and Jan Garrett. I want to thank them very much for being willing to share their wonderful uplifting music, to share with us the New Thought music. And bringing Karen Drucker on August 3rd is again a way to lighten ourselves and invite us into our hearts, and an opportunity to open up, which again, if you're watching the news, might need a little bit of that coming together and sharing in that jovial music patterns. So Karen Drucker coming on August 3rd. So I want to end with this. Ernest Holmes, in the Sermon by the Sea, stated, "Find someone whose song is really celestial, because it is the outburst of the cosmic urge to sing, and I shall hear the music of the spheres." And I would like to add to Sermon by the Sea, find me someone whose cosmic creativity divinely inspires, empowers, and demonstrates the unlimited possibilities for all humanity. And I will see the transformation of our worldly society, living in harmony, unity, health, and joy. Namaste.